We are pretty much live. Thank you all for coming to the January meeting, our first meeting of 2023. My name is John Doyle, and I'm the president of our board for City Island Rising. As our second guest speaker just walks in, we have good timing. I want to just call this meeting to order, which is probably why the fridge started so loudly, because they knew we were going to call this meeting to order. If someone can just check online and make sure everyone can hear us, because I know sometimes the tech aspect of this is a problem, and I don't want to have our tech guy have to pay for soundproofing later on. I want to thank everyone for showing up today. The weather is not good, it is not easy, and it is not, the fact you're showing up on a Thursday night to build community is a good sign for everyone in the community. We have a lot to get to tonight, so I'm not going to, I'm going to save all the business for the inside of the meeting, because there's a lot going on City Island right now. The first thing that we want to introduce is our first guest, which are representatives of the City Island Gateway Project, which has been a concept that has been building in the community and working in the community for the better part of 10 years. There's a lot of people doing a lot of hard work, including the two people we're going to hear from in a minute. There's also, unfortunately, been some misinformation about what it is, what it isn't, and the best way we can combat misinformation is to bring in straight from the source, have everybody ask their questions either here in person or online, and we will make time for that. Answer as many questions as humanly possible in the given time we have, which is about 20-25 minutes. And then, and if you still want to ask questions, you can email them to cityislandrising, all one word, @gmail.com, and we will get those questions to Linda and to the other members of the board so we can get these questions asked and answered. And I want to thank Beverly of our board, who's en route. She picked up her son from band, so she couldn't be here right now, but who's en route because this was her idea to get this going. So again, this is going to be an introduction, kind of a presentation from our guests, and then save your questions for the end. And at the end, we will get to as many questions as humanly possible. So without further ado, let's give a big hand to Linda Baldwin from the Gateway.
Thank you. You want
if you could stand here, yes.
Okay, great. And let me introduce Sandra Erickson, who is a member of the board of the City Island Gateway, an organization that was created, community-based 501c3 organization with representatives from major organizations in the community, as well as individuals who have an interest in preserving access to the waterfront and that property for community use. So to take it back even further than 10 years, that property was abandoned for many years and fell into disrepair. And because it was sold as for failure to pay back taxes through a tax lien sale, it got sold at auction, and land that was originally city-owned fell back to the city. And so a very, very large portion of that property, and I'm going to show a picture of it. So some of you may recognize this. This is the land that's immediately to the left as you come over the bridge onto City Island. For the last few years, there's just been trucks parked there illegally without the city's consent. And our organization has been active in trying to bring this issue to the Department of Transportation's attention, because the Department of Transportation had site control and responsibility over the property. And we're really happy to report, quite by accident, this week, the week before our presentation, there's been some serious improvement with this situation. So we had written to the new commissioner at the Department of Transportation in June. Finally, we're able to have a meeting with a high member of his staff, maybe chief of staff, and that was through the assistance of the community board and Maria, the president of the organization, who sits on the municipal services committee. And with all of that effort, finally, we got their attention, and they this week issued, or very recently issued a notice to vacate to the entity that has been using the city-owned property illegally without the city's consent, and a notice to the neighboring property owner that owns the long pier that you see as you come onto City Island, a notice of encroachment that private property owner has been encroaching on the city-owned property. So if you go by there today, you'll see that most of these trucks are now crowded into a very small space here that's privately owned, and a lot of the debris in this photograph, and we can pass it around, has been removed. And thankfully, and this is a big issue, I don't know where Sandra is, but Sandra's been part of the effort. Con Ed has been trying to get access to that property in order to complete a very important gas main project. The gas line that brings all the gas onto City Island runs under the water and through that property into City Island, and it has leaks in it. Leaks under the water, and they know this because of bubbles that come up out of the pipes. And they have had a contract to, a project on the books for years to fix those leaks, and they haven't been able to. They're now going to be able to because the property is finally cleared. They needed the property cleared to be able to stage that. Once they are done, Con Ed has said they can leave the site so that as long as they have access to the pipe for repairs, they don't care what happens to the property. And we are hoping to re-engage with the Department of Transportation to move forward with a use of that property that is, first of all, beautified and presentable, because it's been an embarrassment for so many years. And really creates the gateway to City Island that City Island deserves, brings back the maritime character to that property, and we are hoping to have all board members reach out to the community to get ideas for what that property could be used for community use. It's got a boat launch there. It has a fair amount of space. It has a building which has been declared an unsafe building, but has a long history here on City Island as a place where boats were rented, and it was a bait and tackle shop. Some people remember the Worm Bar. And if it can be preserved, it may be less expensive than trying to build something new. So we're going to work with the city to see if we can go in and inspect it and see if it can be renovated and preserved and then put back to community use. So, Sandra, do you know if I've left anything out that should be said?
I just want to add, before we started the meeting, we shared with some of the earlier guests that came earlier, that this has been an effort before I was involved, and some people here did share that with us, but the amount of meetings and calls and emails, and we got really nowhere. Elected officials and the members of the board are really impressive group, the organizations that and individuals, that they're very influential, very committed, but you have no idea how a board member to see this recent activity, we're elated. Like, we cannot believe that's, when you try for years, it's just been really unbelievable. So we're very excited about it. And, no, I think you covered everything.
So one thing I'd like to ask John is we'd like to get the opinion of the rising constituency, whoever communicates with you, maybe do a poll of your members to see how they feel about preserving that building and bringing it to, because I think that we would like to, if there's sufficient community interest to have that happen, we'd like to be able to represent that the community wants it so. That'll help us with the city to get permission to go and assess the viability of it and move forward with whatever kind of fundraising, grants, that we could get in order to convert the building back to communities.
So before we take questions from everybody, I just want to give a quick comment. And I'm speaking on behalf of myself as an individual, is that particularly Linda, but also we have Susan who's here, who was a big part of this for many years. And I remember 13 years ago, we had a meeting with one of the then elected officials in the office. And even then it was seeming like this was going to be a big task. And I know that it has, unfortunately, there's been bureaucratic double talk, there's been back and forth, where all of a sudden something's said in one meeting, there's a collective amnesia about promises that were given. And I want to thank particularly Linda, because Linda has been involved in this from the jump and been here. And when we started this organization, we recognized that not all the voices in the community are being heard, and there's a lot of different ways of representing that to people of different generations, different ideas that were being shut out. And one thing we wanted to do is particularly create a civil space where people could come and they could ask these types of questions. It could be a clearinghouse of information without prejudging anything. So I want to thank you, of course, for what you do. And I also want to, I really want to kind of express that anytime you hear something, get it checked out. There are people to ask. Go to the community organizations. Go to, do a Google search. Look in the local newspapers. The Bronx Times is a great resource. News 12 is a great resource. New York One, to verify things, because we're kind of coming up to a stage now. I'm not trying to take this to current events, but a stage of, misinformation that gets channeled. And one of the reasons that I personally, as an individual, and I'm not telling you what to think, I'm just telling you why I think the way I do, is that the Gateway makes a lot of sense, is either we take this land as a community through a organized community process, or we just leave it laissez-faire, and whatever pops up, we'll have absolutely no say in. So I ask all of you, this is land right by the bridge. This is, by and large, a communal space. And it's got a lot of history, as Linda laid out. That the Gateway project, as is, constitutes an effort that we need to all be involved in for us to have some say over what goes there. Because if we have no say, it's kind of like if you don't vote. People say you don't vote, you can't complain. But if you don't take an active interest, then you're on, what's that old expression? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. That's kind of, in a sense, what's true here. And I just ask people to keep that in mind. Again, I'm not telling anyone you can be for it, you can be against it, but keep an open mind and get all the information before you arrive at a conclusion. That's all I ask.
It's kind of hard to be against taking what it is now and
I
making
agree.
it better.
Right.
I know, and there are people, and there are people who have been out there and saying things that have financial interests in this, but I don't want to naysay
I
that.
don't think we need to spend
Yeah.
too much time on that
So
point.
let's get to questions then. Dan,
Yeah.
and then Susan.
So logistics question, if the building is city property,
Yes,
and the land next to the building is city property?
yes.
So what's private property?
Private property is if you go there and you see the pier that
Okay.
sticks out into the water,
Oh, and that
that pier is on a deck,
okay,
and so is the shack next to the pier. All of that is privately owned. If you take the spacing between the shack and the building itself and draw a straight line towards the bridge, that's kind of where the private property line runs.
so,
And then it turns to the left, it turns to the right. So there's a little piece of land and most of the deck where the shack is and the pier. That's the private property.
the private property, so everything from the building
Out towards the water and over what looks like the peninsula, I guess. But the
But that
boat
whole
launch,
fenced-in
the boat
area
launch
is
is city-owned. The city-owned land kind of runs along it runs along the road because that was the original street bed. That's why it's city-owned. They were going to have the bridge run onto City Island a little closer to the water, but they ended up doing the road where it is now. So if you just imagine the road being shifted closer to the water,
Got it.
it's about, I would say, 75 to 100 feet deep.
Big.
It's big.
And
It's
it's
an
a whole,
unmapped
a
city
lot.
street, is it not? Is that the technical term they use?
What's-
It's an unmapped city street.
Yes, it's a mapped but unbuilt street.
There we go.
Yeah, because it's mapped.
All right. Susan, I know you had a question.
It wasn't a question, I just
Okay.
wanted to say that in probably 2010, a bunch of us went and met with every elected official in the Bronx. And we pulled together a letter from them, they all signed it, saying that they believed in this project. And that meant the Parks Department, it was everybody. It was, all the
I remember.
city council people.
Yeah, you know what, I want to thank John,
Yeah.
because he was very helpful
He
in
was.
getting this launched and
Yeah.
getting attention on that. You stayed through
Yeah.
all the way, interested, so
It was,
appreciate
it was definitely,
always.
Yeah, no, I appreciate what you guys are doing.
I don't know how, it all just didn't happen. But.
You have a question?
Barbara and then Patrick.
I can't seem to remember who owns those trucks. I know.
Highland Datacom is
And
the name
what-
of the
Yeah.
company. They were tenants of the private property owner that was renting the city property.
So there
out.
was, okay, so the history is someone was renting the city property and paying the city,
No, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
but there was some kind of lease and they allowed the trucks there and,
Well, just to clarify, lot 149 is landlocked, that's the one that's closer to the water, so they were renting that and it just encroached.
I
on
see.
the-
It's like the current private
The current private road owner is the one that,
is letting the trucks be there?
yes. But now the city has finally defined its borders and told the private property owner what is city owned
Correct.
and what is privately owned. And so now
Okay.
there's no,
So I don't need to ask who the current private property owner is, I guess, because you're not saying who it is.
I actually don't know off the top of my head. It's a
corporate.
It's
It's
a
an
corporate
LLC.
owner. Yeah, you're not gonna hear a name if you even know the corporate ownership name.
And it's not I don't want to disclose too, it's not someone who lives in the neighborhood. No, he actually,
Bought as an investment.
yeah.
And I guess my other question, which is do we think this big change that's happened is because there's a new commissioner of transportation? Is that why? Is this the why of what the
What I would say is, we're fortunate to have gotten the attention of the staff of the new commissioner of the Department of Transportation, and we did get results this year. So
Con
I
Ed
think,
gave a big push.
yes.
Yes.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Bubbling up from.
Well, that's important to know, because we gotta know who our friends are.
Yeah, and just because they're a little too humble here,
Yeah.
it really, why it changed was because Linda and
Maria,
Maria
I know.
and Sandra were
And
going
Barbara, who's been
to
on this
all
journey.
these,
And Barbara
all
Gillespie,
these meetings and really just hammering, and to the point where, when someone's showing up at every single meeting and asking the same question,
Right.
they have to get respect. And this was going on, I remember during the height of COVID, we were on these Zoom calls that went on for hours, that then this would be one of the process points, but people would hammer this home. So there are a lot of people who do, like Linda, who serve.
But there was a change of Department of Transportation, and they started listening.
Yes, yeah, and thankfully, they've done something that has been in their legal department for a very long time, so it finally came out.
Patrick.
Okay, Linda, a couple of very quick questions and comments. Originally, I think trucks were allowed to park there when they were constructing the bridge, and that gave them the piggyback. Oh, I guess this is truck parking, right? Is that true? So they were allowed to park there by permission of the city
Yes,
for the bridge
Correct.
construction. And then it just fell off from there.
that's a good point. And we were told, hold off on your plans for the community. We need the property for the bridge reconstruction. But after we're done, you can have it, but that did not happen. And here we are, years later, still
And the
not
other thing
able
is
to
they
do
are
it.
locking the property, right? Illegally also?
That was correct. The user had a lock on the gate.
Oh, even for the city property, it's being locked.
Yeah, the whole thing
But
is
now
behind the same
The
gate.
murkiness of the ownership is kind of what led to some of the holdup here, frankly. That the city didn't want to say what was what, and it took Linda and Sandra and everyone else to really push them.
And Con Ed,
Yes, and
to your point, yes.
All right, now something nice question. So I seem to remember your original vision was for that building to become something like a City Island Information Center. Is that still on your mind?
You know, we had a list of possible uses, and this is a good time to say that the Gateway Board is organized with 8 community organizations on City Island. The communities, and we tried to have a good representative group. The Community Center, the Historical Society, the City Island Civic, the theater, City Island Community Theater for Arts, the PS, you know, the PTA could have a representative. Who am I missing?
Nautical music?
The PTA.
She said the history.
PTA is on.
She said the
There's
history.
8. The Garden Club.
The Legion?
And the Legion, thank you. Yes, and the Legion has been active and great too. They have a big interest because they have the monument right across the street. And so, in addition to those, there are members like myself, like Sandra, like Maria, like Barbara, like others who I can't remember right now, but they've all been active over the years. Robert, the architect, Robert Kay, and he's a preservationist architect, so he's going to go and take a look at the building as well. And we've had so many people from the community offer their services on a volunteer basis when we need them. We've just been waiting for this moment to really begin to be more engaged and active with the city's permission, which we haven't had.
This is fantastic.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Bravo. I mean,
I'm excited.
So really get the word out, and if we could poll your
Yeah,
members
absolutely.
at some point
Yeah,
to
we'll
find
put
out their
something
thoughts,
together.
that would be great feedback.
And I looked online to see if anyone had a question. We're going to just give it a few more minutes on those questions. I guess I'm going to give a question while we wait for that. And if people want to get more involved, who live on the island, what do you advise that they do?
We have an email,
Okay, what is the
which, can I give it to you afterwards?
Sure,
Because
sure.
I'd have to look it up, I don't want to say it wrong
Okay,
out
no
loud.
worries.
And I'll send it to you, and you can send it out to your
Yeah.
members too, and they can do that. And
Absolutely.
now that there's some good news to report, we'll write something up for the Island Current, and then each of the members who are representatives from their organizations, and others like who are like Maria and Barbara Dillon, like they're members of the City Island Oyster Reef, and Beverly is a board member. Beverly is a board member, and she's
Right.
one of your board members as well. So ask all of our board members to go out to their organizations and give updates and get feedback from their members as well.
And I just want to point out, again, just in the needs of what's going on in the neighborhood, yeah, I joke sometimes this is the neighborhood of 4,500 people with 9,000 different opinions on everything. Not everyone is going to agree on everything, but it's important that we participate, and particularly in this process, because they really, Linda and her team have really brought this a very long way. And they've had to put up with delays for the bridge being reconstructed, to Con Edison, to you know, bureaucratic hot potato, for lack of a better word. And so we really need to, you know, be involved in this. And when you speak to your, because again, all those elected officials who signed that letter, with the exception of one, have turned over at least once.
Right.
Some have turned over twice. So we have a new group of elected officials. And really, when you see your elected officials, just let them know that this is important to you. That's all. Whatever your opinion is. Let them, if this is important to you, can verbalize that, because there's going to be a need for going for funding, and there's going to be a need for their advocacy.
If I could just close by saying, our number one priority at the beginning is just beautification and getting the eyesore that it is, you know, reversing that, and then turning to, well, what is a great use, and then getting the feedback from the community. But one thing we'd like to do is to have whatever the use is be helpful to a wide range of ages and uses, you know, youth, seniors, maybe a community garden, just so many different possibilities that, and it'll be hard to choose, but it'll be great to go through that process.
And a lot of people do need a kayak. I'm just speaking
Yes,
for me. A lot of
kayak
people do need a
storage.
kayak launch from the island.
And storage.
And storage.
And you know what? And I say this because I see Dan out here, and I see a lot of people who are kind of more on the avenue a lot. And you know, the first thing people ask you is like, "Oh, I want to go sit by the water or something like that." And this could provide that opportunity in a way that is orderly and fair and everything else. So, just something worth considering.
Possibilities.
Go ahead, Scott.
The adjoining privately owned property, if it were part of this project, would make it even more appealing to the community. And you have a group that are trying to figure out how to approach that and how to try to bring that about.
Well, now that the city has defined what it owns, it's gonna be much clearer to the private property owner what they own. And then we can actually approach them and ask them whether they're interested in selling or donating their land for a tax write-off. You know, we're a 501c3, maybe if we talk to the Trust for Public Land about setting up a possibility for a land donation for permanent public and park use. There are a lot of options, but we're really just getting started, and we're gonna focus on the area that's city owned and then see what we can do from there. But
I'm looking online, we don't have any questions right now, but you can still submit your questions if you're watching this after the fact, because we put this on a lot of the different community groups. It's on Facebook Live right now. We then put it on YouTube, which is kind of a permanent record. It's going to go on our website, which we're about to launch. So if people are watching this after the fact, they can always email us, cityonrising@gmail.com, and we will get your questions to Linda and her team as well. So let's give them a big round of applause for this. Just before we call up our second speaker who's arrived, and thank you guys for coming to present, and we'll be in touch on the poll. We do have some of our elected official representatives both here in person as well as tuning in virtually. We're going to start with the person who came in person, and we have Nika, who's here from Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's office. Let's give her a round of applause. Do you have anything you'd like to share with us? Sure.
Thank you so much, everybody, especially Linda and others who have been working on this project, and thank you for inviting us. I just wanted to say, because of redistricting, our office, we recently moved to Club City, so our district office is here, and we want to invite all of you to come to our office. Please send it, anyone who is looking, needs help with anything to our office. I brought my business card, so I'll leave it here. And then also I'm available to anybody who wants to speak to me. I'll be representing the City Island Club City side of Hallam Bay. So I'm available to you. Reach out to me whenever you need. And then we're also hiring for 2 positions for Bronx constituent liaisons. So if you know anyone who's interested, please reach out to me. And they can also go into our website and apply.
And the best part is that the new district office is right in Co-op City.
Yeah.
So it's a 5-minute drive now. You don't need to go over a bridge or anything. You always had the Parkchester office, but
Yeah.
the big office is now, is it Bartow or Dreiser? Dreiser. So you go, it's 5 minutes. So if you ever have a problem, you can go right to their office and they will help you. And if anyone has a question for Nipa, I just want to say that we've been doing a lot of work through the bipartisan infrastructure bill to try to get monies to Con Edison to underground our utility lines. And the biggest champion of that effort has been the Congresswoman in her office. So on behalf of all of us, we want you to please convey to the Congresswoman how much we appreciate it. And last thing, I was going to save this, but since you're here and he's not yet here, one of our board members, David Diaz, who has always worked very closely with the Congresswoman, arranged that City on Rising was featured for Giving Tuesday through the Congresswoman's efforts. So we actually raised, through the Congresswoman putting out an e-blast for us, over $6,000 of grassroots donations. So thank her for that as well. We'll make sure that money comes back to the community to address food insecurity and assistance for undocumented folks who live here, because I know that was part of the purpose. So thank you so much for being here. I also want to acknowledge, because I know they're on the chat, because they both commented and they did email beforehand, we have Stephen Ochoa from Senator Natalia Fernandez's office, our new state senator. They're on right now. The senator was going to try to drop by, but she had a last-minute conflict. We are working to get her at a future meeting. And then, of course, we have Jackie Cresson, who is council member Marjorie Velasquez's chief of staff, who are on right now. So I want to thank them both very much. And you can reach out to their offices as well if you need help with anything. They both have full-time constituent service operations. And then without, is this here?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. I'm sorry, I can't see it from here. So I'll just bring up our second guest, because there's a lot going on in the neighborhood. We want to cover it in kind of fast succession. And that's, we received a $20,000 grant for capacity building for our organization. And what we've been doing is we've been setting it on 3 separate things that are important to us. One is our website, which we've all been doing bios for to get everything in, and to put up some of our core initiatives. We should be launching that in the next week. Number 2 is we are working to do a resiliency assessment, and we've been actually in dialogue with Pratt University, and they're going to actually, someone from their School of Sustainability is likely, it's not done deal, but likely to be assigned, and we're going to start doing workshops to talk about our vulnerable points in the community and how we can get those addressed, because there's going to be a lot of money coming into this, coming available for, through the bipartisan infrastructure bill, through the Inflation Reduction Act, through the Green Bond Initiative, which is $4 billion that was on your ballot in November. So there's going to be a lot of money coming in. So our position has always been either through our partnership with Sea Grant New York, where we document a lot of the flooding in the neighborhoods, or through what we're going to be doing likely with Pratt, is we try to have the data, the information, and the presentation all together. So as the money becomes available, this is something that we're going to ask our elected officials to capitalize on. But our third aspect of it is we wanted to bring further attention to the climate change, the climate crisis, the unique vulnerabilities we as a small coastal community on the Long Island Sound face. And we decided to do that through a mural. And our mural is on the corner of Schofield Street and City Island Avenue, right next to 239 Clay. And actually, Senator Fernandez was very helpful in acquiring this spot for us to do the mural. And the person who's been putting it together is a City Islander through and through, and it's Wes Roundtree. So Wes, why don't you come up here and just explain what we're doing?
Before I start on the mural, I just want you to know, thank you for the 663 City Island property, because I was the DOT inspector sent out to take pictures and issue the notice of violation.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I also want to say that if there are other things around the island, things that are like blatantly illegal, that's taking up city property, I think part of the reason why they sent me out here to begin with is because they asked me, like, oh, do you know about this property? And I said, yeah, I've known about this for years. And I live here, so it was just convenient for them to send me. So I don't know if other things are out there. Maybe, while I'm at the DOT, now's the time.
Which property are you talking about? Are you talking about
The Gateway?
Gateway?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I won't get you wrong,
No.
but there is another property, and that's the crane company. I mean, do you know about that one?
That I don't know.
Okay, we'll
Yeah.
talk.
I don't know about that property.
So, yeah, I mean, that's privately owned.
Yeah.
That might be a little bit tougher.
No.
We'll talk about it, but that might be. I didn't want to out you for
Yeah.
being the DOT person, but I can share now that you have Deep Throat has been revealed here. I can share that Wes has been very on top of this. So, and I know that's been communicated through Beverly to your board.
I'm gonna want an autograph or something.
There we go. All right.
But so just I would say though I still can't go to my supervisors at the DOT and say, hey, this and this and this.
I understand.
You just have to really show the effort, and then maybe they'll send me out there. So
Okay, you're still deep-throated underground.
the mural, so I'm going to make this short and sweet. When John and City Island Rising contacted me about the mural, the water raising with the flood lines increasing, that was something that I didn't know about. So I did my research and finding out that by 2050, like most of the island's going to be like flood zone. It's crazy, right? I mean, that's it's nuts. So I'm really happy to do this mural. I'll just give you sort of what my idea on it is, where I pictured like a sort of a almost pretty doomsday warning, where it's just the islands in the middle, and then waves are coming out at the sides, and then but I'll sort of point to areas that really need to be protected, and yeah, that's about it. I hope I'll try to make it as pleasant and nice to look at as possible.
You're the artist?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We try to go local sourced on everything here. And Wes is a talented artist who donated his services for our banner that we usually hang up when we're tabling free of charge. So I want to thank him for that. And no, I mean, we're going to try to incorporate into it a little different ways to get involved in the environmental movement as well. But absolutely.
So I want to speak on behalf of City Island Oyster Reef, which has gotten several grants, and it's an environmental organization. And the latest grant is researching right now where to best put the oyster reefs that we want to build, and we're in the process of developing that with our partners, Save the Sound and Billion Oyster Project. So we've gotten $250,000 to research the best places around the island. One of the reasons to have oyster reefs is resiliency. They protect against flooding. So we are now picking the two areas. We are in the process. We just had meetings. Where are the best two places after all kinds of scientific research and dive surveys and all kinds of the last year with this grant that we had, picking those two places. So we should be talking because that will affect the resiliency around the island, these oyster reefs that we're going to be
Okay. Yeah.
building.
You sure? Yeah. Let's arrange something. Maybe we can find a way to incorporate a little of that into what we're doing. Maybe. I don't want to interfere with the artistic process. I promise that.
No, not. I don't
No,
know.
I mean,
It
okay,
has nothing to do
Matt,
with
that's
that.
fine.
I'm just talking about resiliency in
Yeah.
general.
So another thing I wanted to say, while I've been out there painting, a lot of people will either drive by or walk by, and just the mural's not even done yet, but just me in the act of doing the mural and then asking me, oh well, what is this for? And I tell them about it. They're like, oh, I didn't know about that. So it's a nice thing, like visual art, street art. There it is. Street art. It's a good way to bring people into the present moment. To while they're walking about, while they're going about their normal day, it shoots out at them. It reminds them. And if you make it pretty, or if you make it interesting enough, it can really sort of get into their heads.
Art is activism, right? And this calls people to action. Good. Steve.
I think an idea might be for yourself or someone to get in touch with the current and really publicize this so the general population knows what's happening, or perhaps a News 12 come by and let them know what's happening so that the public is aware of what's going on.
That's the big, and Wes has been doing a yeoman's job, but once it's finished, I think that's the big, whatever. But we did put it on our social media today, and he's been doing a great job. So, but we will make sure that, I will make sure that.
And I'm working, I know I'm working as fast as I can, but I either have my 9 to 5 with the DOT, or it's raining, or I was sick earlier, but weekends are, I'm working on it.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Wes before we let him? Yes, Linda, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, exciting to see how art can engage community. And I know that that's one of the things we've also talked about on the Gateway Board, how to incorporate the arts into whatever we're doing as another way of engaging community. So it's great to see it happening here, and hopefully you can give us some ideas about how to do it over there at the Gateway.
Yeah. And I hope other artists might be welcome to do more art around the island. Just make things look nice.
Absolutely. Thank you, Wes.
Thank you.
When, you know, this is now, what is it, the third mural on the island, because you have the 9/11 mural that was redone. You have the Liz Alderman's put a bird on it. You have Ron Turner's collection of people who have passed, which is very meaningful. So, you know, we've been having a lot of art in public places, and I think it's a big improvement. Go ahead.
I also did a mural at the Taste of Italy deli. It's
Good.
the brick wall mural that you see when you come in.
There we go. Michael.
Yeah, I'd like to give a point to Linda about, so just as it was suggested a little earlier in the way of getting things out into the community view, maybe you could make that statement and encourage them.
Oh, yes, I think we did mention that we were gonna try and, put an
I'm
article
sorry.
in print now that we have good, news to share.
Yes,
So
no, that's great.
we will do that.
Good
Yeah.
to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. And so I want to thank Wes and I want to thank Linda for being our guest speakers. Again, there's a lot of good happening on the island. And if you know of things, you can always suggest to groups, our next speaker. Just email us and we will, Linda was a suggestion by Beverly, and Wes I had been pushing on for a while to come and give a presentation. I appreciate him doing it on short notice. We're going to start with our community items. We're going to go through the agenda, but there's a lot of room at the end for input and everything else. We are trying to do a Narcan training. This is for the naloxone, where they give you the kit. It's free of charge. DOH does this, and we are offering this as a service that we've been doing. We've done 2 or 3 of these on City Island. Again, we've been hard hit by the opioid epidemic, and this is something tangible we can all do. They give you the kit. If you administer Narcan, you can save a life. There have been many cases in the Bronx where someone has been seen overdose, and just to have it, and also to give it to people who are maybe suffering, with overcoming addiction or whatnot, so they just have it on their person so they can help somebody who's in need. So if you are interested in Narcan, is anyone in the room interested of getting the training before because I know some people have already. All right, and then if you're online, we're going to do an online solicitation to see if people are. If we get more than 10 people, we'll do it in person. If we get less than 10 people, we'll do an online version of training, and we'll drop off the Narcan kits to their homes. The second thing, and this is in regards to the fire on Schofield Street, which is, I'm sorry, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I did actually.
Okay.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but both Nancy and I did that training and we got the kit.
Yeah.
We have no idea what to do or who people know who we are and that we're available.
Yeah.
There's really nothing that follows from it.
Well, I think the thought is to have this so widely available that people have it on their person, so they can just administer it to anyone. So even someone on the street, or a loved one or a friend or whatnot. But that is something that's talked about. The second thing is, after the fire on Schofield Street, we reached out to the fire department, and they're willing to come to the island to do an inspection of homes and to look at the fire detectors, and then to give you a fire detector. So if you're interested in that, email us at cityislandrising@gmail.com. We will be doing that in the next 2 months. We're going to be setting up a day where they'll literally go house to house to house to house. So that'll be good. And again, this is just to make sure that fire safety is on everybody's mind. We've had some thankfully, at least as of late, there have been no fatalities, but we've had some bad damage done by fires, and we want everyone to be safe. On old business, we're about to revamp the compost project. I know that there's been a compost bin put in across the street from the school, so we're going to try to find ways to coordinate with them, but it's probably going to be more of a drop off and less of a tabling, because the tabling we have to pay for staff and that gets expensive. The website, as I already said, is about to go live. So we're working on that. We're also, we've been in touch with a company that does urgent care and reaching out to our friends in the real estate industry. We're trying to find a place on the island that's small to possibly get an urgent care, a reputable urgent care, which could also possibly double with doing some level of primary care and having the urgent care be up after that. So to bring more medical services here, because it's been identified as an indicator of a lot of potential vulnerabilities for the neighborhood. UPK, things are, again, the contract has been issued. We have the nonprofit provider. It's Bronx House. We've been finalizing some of the locational aspects of it. It's a little bit of a chicken and the egg situation with DOE. They don't like to release contracts before the program starts, but the building we have in mind needs some extensive renovation, so we've been in touch with our elected officials, and things seem to be going in a very positive direction. So, on E is the Human Rights Commission came to City Island as a result of the racist note that was written that made all the headlines. I accompanied them for part of that tour. We went to all the businesses who were affected. We also went to just general businesses to let them know that the Human Rights Commission is here and here to investigate and look into abuses of the Human Rights Code and law in New York City. So if you're discriminated against because of your race, gender, sexual orientation or identity, documented status, what have you, you can reach out to the Human Rights Commission, and we certainly encourage you to do that. Again, this is by and large a very, very welcoming community, I personally find. However, there are always some bad apples, and if people need resources, we are here to lift up those voices and to be available for them. On new business, I already said AOC raised us over $6,000, so we thank her. The utility line work we already touched on. We're going to bring at our November meeting. We talked about bringing Senator Fernandez here for a big meeting like we did with Senator Biaggi. I'm pleased to inform you all that's in the works. I spoke about our possible collaboration with Pratt, and we've been applying for different grants. We are waiting on a decision about a parks grant, which would be some event planning and kind of fun family stuff. We applied for a grant with OEM, which is the Office of Emergency Management. We weren't selected for this round, but they have encouraged us to apply again, and we may well do so. Beyond those things, I'm going to open up the floor. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? I know I'm not as exciting as our past guests. Yes, go ahead.
Anything new with the range and the closure?
Oh, yeah.
We had a meeting on the range. Again, I think something is going to be in the Bronx Times soon on this. Things are proceeding. They're about to issue, I believe it's the final contract. We are there communicating that soundproofing is our number one concern. Obviously now we've kind of reached a point with the range where it seems very likely that the grant is going to, that the funding is there and is secure, which is great. It's supposed to start in the next 2 years, but that there are going to be issues that the reconstruction of the range addresses, which is great, and there are going to be issues that we need state legislation to address. So the nice thing is that both our assembly member and our new senator, she was formerly on the Rodman's Neck bill, the legislation we helped craft, and now she's the senator. So now we have a bill in 2 houses. So I know I spoke to both of their offices, and I know the bill is going to be reintroduced for this session, and I know it is a priority for both of them. So our hope is that maybe this year the bill passes both houses and then goes to the governor for her signature. The reason being is that, again, there needs to be a comprehensive environmental test. There's nothing that the reconstruction is now slated to do that's going to deal with the bomb range, and that needs to be dealt with. And again, requiring by state law for it to be fully enclosed, rather than the 85% enclosure that they're saying is important. And also, the range beyond 100% enclosure, which should deal with all the noise issues, the range needs ground rules. As of right now, we're operating on a memorandum of understanding that they selectively abide by. If it was in state law, then that's codified and it's greater for enforcement action. So that deals with both the time of the range, the decimal levels of the range, and frankly, the decibel level should be nothing because we shouldn't be hearing it. So, this is moving forward, but I think the construction of the range is going to help with these things. You know what I'll do is I'm going to actually make a note of it. I'm going to write up something and put it on our social media channels, which will be like a full update on where we are. Susan and then Linda.
So a long time ago,
Of course,
in the 90s, they took $22 million to clean up that site and get all the lead out of there. And have they done anything? They were supposed to have a plan to keep that clean.
You're 100% right.
And I bet they didn't because nobody was watching them, right?
So it's actually funny. 8 years ago was when we had that meeting with Bratton, where we basically found out that they had been pulling the chain since Bloomberg's years.
Wow.
So I bring that up because we went on a tour immediately thereafter, and we had asked about a lot of the lead things. And at least in government, I know some people in the room work in government, how you can always tell somebody's in trouble or they're not standing on a sure thing is when they won't respond to this particular problem in writing, but when they see you, they'll show you something that's written out in long form or whatever. And that's what they were doing on the lead. They were like, oh, the lead is fine. I'm like, oh, so you'll put that in writing and say, oh, no, we can't do that.
Yeah.
So I actually, because I sit on the precinct council, we foiled for years of environmental reports. And we had Chris Carpentieri, who's an environmental attorney, as well as Nancy Keck, who's the Health and Human Services Director for the Borough President, look at them. And basically, you couldn't really tell from the reports how, it's kind of, it wasn't conclusive. So that's why the legislation is needed. You're touching on a very important issue.
Yeah.
And I know in the original lawsuit, which you played a big role in, and others, the Fishermen's Union was on that lawsuit because people used to fish off East Chester Bay. That's not happening now. And the lead is a big reason as to why.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a cause for concern and something we're going to try to address.
Yeah, the lead levels were high.
Totally agree. And that's why the environmental report is needed. And the legislation says not only should the environmental report be done, but they have to release it publicly on a website. The state compelling the city to put it on a website right after it's done.
Yeah.
So everybody sees everything.
They should be testing it. They should be publicized.
DEP does do testing, but again,
They don't
getting
publicize
responses
it.
for these
Yeah.
people,
Ridiculous.
yeah, I mean, you see what these guys went through with the gateway. So you imagine something where there's actually legal liability. I mean, nobody answers anything. Linda, go ahead.
I just wanted to, thank you for your continued activism on something that really impacts all of us who are especially down there every day. But I also found the email, because I don't normally email the group, and I could, could I get on camera and say the name,
Yeah, of course.
name of
Please.
the email
It's
is,
the gateway email.
yes, the gateway email is city.island.gateway@gmail.com. So please, send us your thoughts, ideas, and we'll respond to your emails and also include you in any updates if you're interested going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Linda. And so we will do something more comprehensive on Rodman's Neck to bring everybody up to speed. What we were doing for a while, and I did a presentation. It's easier when we're all on Zoom together because I can pull up a PowerPoint and I can kind of have the different boxes on what we're making progress on and what we're not making progress on. And it's a little, I can do that with like these guys did with the poster boards, but it's a little bit more cumbersome. But we'll put something together for social media that will kind of, what's more short term in the reconstruction and what's longer term that needs to be addressed through legislation. But, again, the RFP's been issued, it's design build, so we're dealing with it's not going to be two contractors handing it off to each other. Things seem to be moving in the right direction with Rodman's Neck. It's been a long task to get this back on track. Bob Beater, who was at our last meeting, who's the president of the precinct council, has been instrumental in keeping us on our monitoring committee, which we reconstituted, and having twice annual meetings to make sure this project stays on track. So there's more work to do, but I feel, it's kind of like the gateway in the sense of that people say, problem's not solved, you've done nothing. Well, people need to respectfully appreciate that there's a lot of little steps, and I'm not saying you're saying, I'm not talking about you when I say this, I'm talking about people in the online commentary. There's a lot of little steps that go on that are, each one gets us a little bit further. That's all I'm trying to say.
Sure. Everything goes very slowly.
Yes.
In government, very slowly.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Even getting,
Anything.
yes. Carlene.
An issue that I'm sure has been discussed a million times. It's those cars that drive 60 miles an hour up the middle lane. And it's just so horrible. I mean, why can't a camera? Can't there be a camera that would catch that, the speed of the license plate?
So right now there is one camera that does just that, and it runs 24/7 now. And I'm going to tell you all, it's on the corner of Carroll Street, and it gets people going down this way. So what we have asked is they put up a second camera, a second school camera in the other direction, so we can get the other side. But I have to tell you, because I do live on the avenue, that camera now goes off all the time, and I get a very sick sense of satisfaction when I see someone going 60 miles an hour and I see that camera going up, because they are going to get a ticket. So I do have to tell you, it is getting there.
There is following.
Yes.
There
Yes.
really are.
So these are police cameras then?
It's a DOT speed camera.
Good.
Yeah, the police cameras, I'm glad you said, there's a lot of misinformation that the Argus camera by the bridge somehow measures speeding. Some people have put that propaganda out. That's totally untrue. It doesn't do anything with speeding. It is something the police monitor, but it's not measuring the speeding going on. The only camera that's measuring speeding is the one that's on Carroll Street. And we're hopefully going to get one on the other side of the street, because what Carlene is talking about is a big problem. But at least right now, we're getting some of that problem dealt with. Frankly, I would love if they put a speed, and I only asked for it I asked for them to look at the whole neighborhood, but I would love to get one by the bridge too, because that's really, Pelham Bay Park is the wild, wild west of speeding, but state law is that you need to be within, I want to say, half a mile or less of a school. The speed cameras right now are only supposed to operate because of school. And remember, for many years, the speed cameras turned on at 6 a.m. and turned off at 11 p.m., Monday through Friday, which
Left the weekend.
exactly, and that's the island's traffic pattern. So that didn't really, it helped a little bit, but it didn't do us a lot of good. Now that camera runs 24/7, all year long.
And it goes to police, right?
It goes to DOT because they get issued a ticket. And the ticket goes on their record. And then I believe the city council passed legislation that if you get 7 speeding tickets in a given year, they can tow your car.
But a half a mile from the school
Yeah.
is almost to the gateway or wherever.
So the camera's stationed within a half mile of the school.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
No, but it only gets you have to pass Carroll Street to get caught speeding. So that's why I'm in there. Francine.
Where's the school that is for the camera that's on the access road going north on the side of 95?
Oh, yes. This was in the Daily News a few weeks ago. Very good point. I appreciate that. It's an off-island thing, but it's a very good point. So you're talking about the camera by Veterans Bicentennial Park. And the school is the I-92 campus on Randall Avenue. And a lot of people, so full disclosure, and she probably wouldn't like me mentioning this, my sister lives in Edgewater Park, so I'm down there a very great deal. And this is the camera right outside Edgewater Park. They are using that camera is within a half of a mile of the school. But I think that one's pretty clearly for revenue generating, because no one's, kids are not crossing I-95 to go to that place. I agree with you. But that is something that's being talked about for sure. A little far beyond the bridge, as Michael Shanley's column used to be. Yes, go ahead, Simon.
I just want to mention something so everyone knows. I've had a real problem with mailboxes here. So the mailbox across from the Legion, which I use every day, I try to go right before it comes at 10, but I had so many checks stolen out of there, and we got like $60,000 worth of fraud. Most of it we got back, but they'll take the check, wash the name, they will cut and paste your signature on there, make a fake check, rubber cement along the edge of the field, and they
I
fish
didn't know.
and take out cherries.
Trees that are sticking there.
I noticed that they
Find
put,
out that they can reach in and get it.
Or they can fish, they can
Yeah.
put something very sticky, and you think it's only this big, but they can pull things out. One of my neighbors saw.
I know they retrofitted a few of the mailboxes on the avenue. The one by Schofield Street was renovated, retrofitted, so to prevent that, the fishing that's going on.
Yes, they
So-
are doing it, this happened to us not even a month ago, so it's very dangerous.
One thing we may want to do, and I have, so Nipa had to leave, but she left a bunch of her cards here. Since the post office is federal, I will mention it to AOC's office, but I think if a lot of us started emailing, that would also be very helpful.
She also left other information,
Oh, good.
which I'm gonna put here, that
Thank
you
you.
can sign
Yes.
a sheet if anybody wants to.
And then everybody, there was a sign-in sheet going around. Has everybody signed our sign-in sheet? I think it's over on the table by Andrea right now. If people can just sign it before they leave, that'd be very helpful. Does anyone else have a question, comment, concern that's not been asked or addressed? Oh, one other thing, because I know there's speeding on Miniford Avenue. I've put in through different outlets for the last 15 years. We've done 3 or 4 different requests for speed humps. They've been denied each and every time. We asked them to examine it on a summer weekend. They have not done it. They've done it, but said it's still not necessary. So what we have done is we foiled for all the accidents that have happened. So we're planning something as we get into the spring and summer season, a lot more interactive and fun to draw attention to this. So, we're not taking no for an answer. We're just trying to think of a different way to tackle this problem. So I didn't want anyone to think that we said it or forgot it. We are still trying to address this. Does anyone else have any sort of question, comment, concern, quality of life issue, anything like that? All right. I want to thank everybody for coming, and thank yourselves for coming, of course, and we will meet again next month, and I'll be around if you want to ask me something offline. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.